Good afternoon, Anna. Uncle G. Welcome, guys. Chris is going to join us tonight at 6 o'clock. I wanted to come in a little bit early to make sure my sound was good and the settings and all that was good. Can you all hear me? Hi, Marisol. I was just making sure you guys can hear me okay. Hey, Sarah. Emily. Thank you, Flying. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I figured coming in a few minutes early will give people a chance to come in. And hey there. Hey, Boo Boo. Hope you guys are all doing well this evening. I've never even had somebody co-host, so we're gonna have to figure out how to send the invite to them and get them on here and all that. Sarah, it was hot. But I'll say that all the way until the temps cool down. It's it's tiring after a long week, and it's just the heat. It's late. 22:47 there. Welcome, guys. I can't see without. Wait. Welcome. I have a feeling we're going to see some new faces in here this evening. Welcome, Phil. Welcome, guys. I figure we can just hang out and chat for the next 10 minutes. Well, thank you, Sarah. I have no clue how it's going to go, honestly. I mean, Chris and I speak outside of TikTok, so I mean, at least I'm not nervous, so. I was I was waiting for something to go wrong, like my neighbor be mowing the grass or something. But the weather turned out nice and nobody's mowing their lawn, so let's see what we have in here. Hamster, welcome. Yeah, it has been a long week, guys. I will be glad when my head hits the pillow tonight. I found a babysitter. Well, hey there. I'm good. How are you? Welcome, guys. Nancy, welcome. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Always good to hear that. Welcome, Jen. Thank you for liking the live. Chris and I are just gonna have a nice talk tonight and go over some things that have been going on. Welcome, Val. Peanut. No, I only cremated two individuals to send home to their loved ones today. I have my one chamber on a cool down today because, hey, you ready, Chris? I'm hitting it while I see it. Did it send it to you, Chris? Yeah. You don't have to come yet, but I didn't want to lose when you came in, it told me you were there and asked me if I wanted to invite you. But welcome, Walker. Diane, welcome. Susan. Got all these TikTok things scrolling across the top right now. My eyes just went goofy. Marisol, thank you. Audrey, welcome. Thank you guys for liking the live and getting it out there. I appreciate it. Philip, welcome. And no, guys, this is not the shirt I worked in today. I just put a clean one on for this live because I didn't know what to throw on. Welcome, Janny. Welcome, guys. Jen, no, water cremation is not legal in the state of Ohio. It is for pets. We do have a pet crematory not too far from where I work that does water cremation. Good night. Thank you for stopping in and saying hi. Welcome, guys. You know what? I don't want to talk too much on water cremation because I don't know enough about it. I've never really looked into it too much because it's not legal here. And I wouldn't want to say the wrong thing. If you know what I mean, if I don't know about it, I don't want to speak on it. Yeah, Sarah. I mean, if I knew what it was to explain it, I definitely would. No, it's not legal in Georgia either. You take care of yourself too. Renee, welcome. Linda. Pigtail, welcome. Terry. Yeah, Jen, a girl I used to work with actually see my screen's going dark, guys. Don't do this to me. Um, she left the place that we worked at last to open that water cremation for pets, the the business. I don't know if it's legal in the UK either. I don't even know what states in the United States it's legal in. I mean, I could easily look that up, but water cremation. You know, I even went through my settings this morning and Googled why my screen would go dark when it's outside, and I switched on all those settings and tried. I was so excited it was working. Renee from Pittsburgh, not far from me. No, Kathy, it's not something I would want for myself either. Mikey, welcome. Oh, no, you didn't put me on the spot. You're fine. Welcome, Craftsman. See, I can see what y'all are typing, but I can't really see with the dark screen who's saying what. Oh, thank you, Larry. How many? We do, like, thank you, between 4 and 6 a day. Yes, Pittsburgh is not far from me. It's probably about an hour. Hello. Does that say Twisted? Hello. Welcome, guys. I'm sitting here tapping my nails. You guys can probably hear that. Hello, is that? Oh, so you guys are going to make me put my glasses on. Hey, Tinks. How long does it take to cremate the average person? It's by weight. What I like to say is about 100 pounds an hour. That's give or take circumstances, but that's usually what my go-to on it. Marilyn, welcome. Cheryl, thank you for the follow. Well, thanks, Tinks. Oh, good night. Thank you for stopping in. I will be here Sunday, guys, as my normal. Welcome, Cindy. Let's see. Vicky, welcome. Happy weekend, Vicky. And thanks for coming into the live tonight. It is not legal in the state of Ohio, water cremation. Got that fly. What is embalming? I have never understood it. You know what, missing you? I do not embalm. That is going to be a question for a funeral director, and I get that a lot, but I can't answer that question for you. All right, Chris. There we go. Oh, Chris, you're really small on my screen.
Let's see.
We can't, I don't see, I just hear you.
I'm trying to figure that. All right, there's the button.
There you are. You're still
All
really
right.
small in my corner, but that's on my settings, I'm sure. Let me
Yeah,
see if I
I'm
can
moving
bring
you.
you up. Whoops, hold on. I almost did something to you. Let's see. Expand. Oh, there you are. Now I see you. You got birds too. Everybody always comments on the birds in my background.
Well, yeah, I figured, I normally do everything from the office, but I was like, you know what? Let me go outside tonight
Uh-huh.
and try a
It's
different
nice.
background.
Absolutely. And you guys all know who Chris is. This is Chris from As the Hearse Turns. And I always screw up the funeral home name because the two different. So you can introduce yourself on that one.
Yeah, so I manage and oversee Wagner, Elfner, and Harkins. We also have Wagner, Elfner, and Berg Funeral Home. Catherine and Nate have they're two separate companies, but Catherine and Nate own both companies. So common ownership, two separate companies.
I just always screw the name up.
No, but thank you for having me. I think it's going to be a wonderful conversation.
I do too. And I figured the chat headline was basically appropriate for what we were talking about and trust in the industry and being broken, and it reflects on all of us.
It really does. And, sadly, it's like, and, Catherine and I have spoken about it many times before. It's a situation to where we take what seems like two steps forward, but then something like this happens, and then we get knocked, six steps back. And it's sad. It really is.
Do you want to give them a little rundown for the ones that are in here that don't know why we're here or what we're even talking about?
Sure. So, what was it? A little over a week ago, I woke up, got getting ready to start my day like I normally do, and my inbox was just blowing up from news articles from individuals and even from my wife, who was just like, "Did you see what happened in Chicago?" And I'm like, "No, what are you talking about?" And I looked at the news articles, and it's absolutely insane. So what happened was there was a complaint issued, and there really hasn't come to surface or come to light exactly what the complaint was or who the complaint was filed by to the professional license board in Illinois for funeral service. So they went and they investigated this complaint, and upon investigation, they made entry into this funeral home, and they found at the time, they said at least 50 loved ones that were in various states of decomposition just being held in this funeral home. And then additionally, they brought out that they found 50 sets of cremated remains in this funeral home that had not been returned to the families. One of the big things that I noticed from the very beginning from the reporting was that the name of the owners of this funeral home were also tied to the Heights crematory, for lack of a better word, scandal that happened last year in Chicago, where over 100 loved ones were being stored in properly and unrefrigerated trailers and Connex containers out on like a warehouse yard. And it boggles my mind that these folks were still allowed to continue to practice in funeral service, even though had their crematory closed down because of those incidents, and still allowed to have access to grieving families.
Well, let me ask you this, Chris. Now, I've been thinking about this for days. If they, if the owner, the one who owned the crematory last year, a year ago, or whenever it was, if he would have been put in jail for what he did, would this have even happened?
Well, that's a good question. I believe the problem is that laws that are currently in place have not caught up to today's times because of the unethical behavior and things like that are being, for being practiced by, I hate to say professionals, but licensees within our profession that are doing bad things. The laws aren't there to hold them accountable, unfortunately. A lot of the laws that are on the books are from early on in regards to um, grave robbing to deter that.
Yeah.
And, we have tons of laws. One thing, I am also a licensed crematory operator. I've managed very high volume crematories before coming into the role that I'm in now. Um, we were, I worked for a cremation society that ran them. There are so many laws governing cremation. However, there's not enough inspectors to get around to be able to be in all of these locations to truly see what's going on. Maryland was backlogged over, I think, 900 or 1,200 from COVID, and they did not become current until after the Heaven Bound incident 2 years ago, which finally forced legislators in Annapolis, Maryland, to finally get legislation in place to give the authority to give the authority to the board to go in and stop operation of a funeral home or a crematory immediately upon an egregious act.
Now, Illinois does not have this, or
So, from what I understand, because of the crematories. So, one thing we have to understand in Illinois right now, crematories, irregardless if owned by a funeral director, fall under the office of the comptroller of Illinois. Okay, funeral homes fall under a separate governing board. So the two do not communicate. And I think that's why we have the problem that we have today, because the comptroller was taking care of the things in the crematory with Heights, and then another licensing and regulatory agencies overseeing funeral homes. However, you would think common sense would say if you're running one poorly, you're probably running the other just as poorly.
exactly. Now, is this at all connected in with what they're talking about, this cemetery that is in trouble, like, or they're investigating as well in Chicago?
So, from what I understand about Bohemian National Cemetery, is that the cemetery there's some connection, and I believe they were supposed to be performing cremations for that funeral home, but also I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, but it has been said that the gentleman is on the board of directors for that cemetery. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things going on, that this family, it has ties to multiple different other funeral homes. Nothing has really came out about that yet, so we'll have to wait and see. Some other folks have said that, the other concerning fact is, talking to the funeral directors that were on my show the other day.
Yes, I listened to that yesterday.
So Southside Chapel was also receiving loved ones from other funeral homes surrounding in that community.
Okay.
And I'm confused at that. I don't understand why they were receiving loved ones from another funeral home.
Yeah, if it wasn't a crematory.
Right, because now, do you guys do outside
Yes.
work? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but your funeral home counter. So Dan is not sitting down and making arrangements for those crematory clients.
No.
At that point, it would be a direct client for that firm and then the funeral home.
Yes.
So I don't understand why other loved ones were stored in those conditions at that funeral home, and I think that those funeral homes should be held just as liable as this funeral home as well. If that's
maybe that's something a path you and I are going to have to go down outside of this live. When I showed you that message I got, maybe that explains more of it.
It could, because after thinking about that more, and then everything that I've been told, that does make sense. And I'm sure that, because Heights Crematory was probably performing cremations for tons of funeral homes.
Yes.
And then my biggest thing as a funeral professional had for me to know what was going on last year and still choose to then turn and send and trust families, loved ones to you after what you've already done, it speaks volumes to the character of the funeral director.
You can't tell me that this husband and wife are the only ones that worked in there as well.
I'm sure there are other employees because
Your
there's
removal staff, you know, everybody. I mean, nobody knew what was going on in here.
well, that's my biggest issue. It's like, what? Why did this go on for so long? How do you accumulate 50 some loved ones? You know, my other thing is, and this is why it's education to the public is so crucial. Why what you do, what I do, what Catherine does, what all the other folks that
Yes.
truly want to educate on social media are doing. If a family is not comfortable with the situation or they feel that something is not right, that family needs to understand they can pick up the phone and call the overseeing boards, the board of morticians, the office of cemetery oversight. Voice a concern. There's no reason you should be waiting months to get your loved one back.
No. And I have to speak on this just from things I've seen in throughout the industry. Is that always going to stop it? Making those complaints to the higher ups.
No, and that's where I'm a huge proponent on, because here let's be honest, even most licensing, most regulating boards, I think, what do they always say? The path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people have great intentions when they want to pursue that option and get appointed to one of those boards and serve. However, when they get in there and realize the true political bureaucracy and the red tape that's involved, that they give up. Until we reform and start making the punishments more severe. Look at the gentleman in the United Kingdom, that funeral director. Did you hear about that story?
You know what? Some of my followers were telling me to look up that story, and I wish I had time to look up all of the stories that they tell me. You know what I mean? I really do. But with the kids and work and stuff, I still have not got, if you want to recap it, because I did not.
So apparently the funeral director in the United Kingdom was returning, in a nutshell, not really the cremated remains of the loved ones to the families. It was, things were backlogged and things like that. However, the United Kingdom said, we're not even playing this game. And I was the quickest I've ever seen. He was sentenced already to 24 or 25 years in prison.
Well, kudos to them. I mean, let's get some of that here.
Well, look at what we're still litigating the Return to Nature funeral home with that giant issue that happened in Colorado, which was 3-4 years ago.
But why? Why is it taking so long?
Exactly.
If this would have been taken care of a year ago and this guy was serving jail time, he couldn't collect bodies again.
Absolutely. The state of Illinois, and I saw that the governor had a press conference and he was asked, and he said, paraphrasing, that the regulatory boards did what they could do and they were operating within the bounds of the law. And you know what? The laws need to be stronger. The repercussions need to be more severe. You start making some examples out of folks, and people are going to ship up, or they're going to shape up or ship out.
It's like you were talking on your As the Hearse Turns with those funeral directors. What happens to the individuals that are not licensed funeral directors that are acting as funeral directors, and who's in control of punishing them?
Well, and that's the
Because,
question. Is it against the law to impersonate a funeral director? I'm not aware of any law as a funeral director that it's against the law to do so. Now, you can go into contract law, and you could say you're going in and you're guilty of fraud. But let's put some stuff on the books that's really going to make it a problem for people to say, oh, I'm a funeral director. No, you're not. You don't have that license. Or if you open up a crematory but you're unlicensed, because I'd be curious to see. I want to know what type of licensing procedures are in place for the crematory operators.
mm-hmm,
Because in Maryland, you're required to go through a certification program, whether it be
mm-hmm,
through NFDA or CANA
mm-hmm,
or ICCFA, something along those lines. You have to complete that, graduate that. Then
mm-hmm.
you have to have hands-on training signed off on by a supervisor. Then you can submit your license to the board to become a certified crematory operator.
Well,
And you
I
have to
know
renew every 2 years.
here I probably did about a year of job shadowing. Then I took the course through Cana. I had to have a BCI and FBI background check done. I don't know if that was through the employer or through the state that had to be done. And then I had to take and pass the laws and regulations class.
Right.
And then I could submit to the board for licensing.
Right. And these type of things, because apparently there was a history with this individual even before the crematory problem a year before that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I played the video on the As the Hearse Turns when we had the two funeral directors on. It was
With
one of
the truck.
No, it was after that. There was a second clip where we talked about him being in the news prior, and it was like a family was recording an interaction with him about how bad their mother was presented. The poor
Yeah.
woman said, "My mom's eyes weren't even closed. You don't close their eyes." And he says, "No, you don't have to do that."
This isn't the same woman I was seeing on TikTok that had to go in. That was just this time and dress and prepare her mother. Do you know which lady I'm talking about?
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, it's just so sad. But then you get people like they were having a service at the funeral home that Dan owns, and somebody walked over and wanted to have a tour of the crematory. And, absolutely. I didn't have any individuals out, nothing like that.
Right.
And they said, because of all the things you see on the news, this is why I wanted to come see the crematory. It is totally breaking that trust.
It's breaking the trust. I know there's so many people that when these type of stories happen, when families come in and we're returning their loved ones after cremation to them, and they ask, how do I know this is my loved one? So one of the things I know I do as a manager, once I took over the location I'm at now, I would actually just show up randomly at our third-party crematory.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime. You don't know when I'm going to show up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And to see the conditions, to make sure that, the processes are in place. But I know from running a crematory, the only time I would see a funeral home manager or an owner pop into the crematory is if they were scheduled for like a witnessing of the cremation.
Now, I do have a lot of funeral directors because you don't have to let us know when you're bringing an individual to us, right. The funeral homes. They just, at any time they could be there. We have our inspections here, and when they do our state inspection, they look at the cooler temps, they pull random files out of our cases, all your paperwork, your I's better be dotted, you know what I mean? Your T's better be crossed. they go through everything during those inspections, and you don't know when they're going to be. Anybody could walk in there at any time.
So let's talk about paperwork. So I'm interested to, and I'm sure more is going to come to light because I saw that there's been a class action that's been initiated now,
Out
which
of Texas.
I believe so. The lady from Texas has issued a
Mm-hmm.
class action against the funeral or against the
Yes.
funeral home. So 50 some people are probably going to join into that, and who knows, maybe more as things come to light.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious to I know in Maryland because I don't cremate here in Pennsylvania. We do not own a
Mm-hmm.
crematory, but Maryland, we needed 3 pieces of paper in order to run a cremation through the machine. We had to have a death certificate, we had to have a burial transit permit, and we had to have our cremation authorization forms.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be curious to start seeing the timelines of when these death certificates were submitted. Because what's one thing that has to go on the death certificate? The date of disposition.
Yes.
Now, does that mean if I put date of disposition for cremation today, which is Friday, that cremation is going to take place today?
No.
Probably,
No.
probably going to take place on Monday, because that's when we go to the crematory.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a feeling there's going to be huge discrepancies in those dates because what's returned with cremated remains. Normally, you have a receipt of the cremated remains and
Mm-hmm.
you have a cremation certificate.
Yes.
And on that cremation certificate, I know depending on everyone's going to be a little different, but normally the date that the
Yes.
cremation, and whether it be in retort number 1, retort number 2, all that data is going to be on that certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to see them subpoena Bohemian, if that's where all these cremations were performed at, their record of cremation. Because we would check in an individual, we would have a check-in form with
Yep.
all the information, and then we would also have like checklist that would be like
Mm-hmm.
date received, date placed into cooler or refrigeration,
Yes.
the location, and it's initialed off by what operators,
Mm-hmm.
and then your double verification. So you're verifying this is crematory Mel that's about to be cremated? Yes. Okay. Who was the second point that also verified it? There's 2 points of verification before going into the retort.
And those times, these transfer teams, they don't realize how important, like I had mentioned to one yesterday, is this 10:30 a.m. or p.m.?
Yep.
And they looked at me like I was stupid, like I really needed to know that. Yes, I do.
Because for us, if we bring someone into our care, we have 24 hours to either embalm, refrigerate, or perform disposition
Mm-hmm.
of an individual. Now because of the new facility and things like that, our refrigeration is huge. So as soon as someone comes into our care, they're automatically in refrigeration. No ifs, ands, or buts. But
yeah.
for smaller funeral homes, that's very important. Chain of custody is key when
Mm-hmm.
all this is going to boil down to paperwork. Because
Yeah.
that attorney is going to depose these individuals, and he's going to take them. He's going to bring them to the carpet on their paperwork. Paperwork is people live and die by the paperwork.
Absolutely. But I mean, is it even going to come down to that when he's not a funeral director? I mean,
Well, here's what it's going to boil down to. His wife is the licensed funeral director.
and it's just suspended. Why isn't she revoked?
I don't know if it's been permanently revoked. I know they immediately suspended the licenses. Now there is some contradictory information. So the funeral directors that were on the show said he was never a funeral director, but I have also heard news stories stating that he was a funeral director and that his license was just revoked or never renewed. So I don't know the truth there.
No, irregardless, then he's still not a director.
Oh, exactly. He is not a licensed director whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, Kim in the comments here does make
That's
a good
probably.
point.
Is that KY Kim are you talking about?
Yeah.
That is my old boss. That is my best friend. She's the one that trained me.
So she says the inspectors can report the deficiencies, but ultimately the board has to decide to prosecute. And she's 100% correct. Because what ends up happening is those deficiencies get reported by the inspector or the investigator. Because a lot of people think that, the investigator can do this, the inspector can do this. They can't. They work for the board.
Yes.
The power of the board is in the board. Now, the other thing is the board can sit there and say, yes, we should do this and we should do that. But normally there is a uh, assistant state's attorney or assistant district attorney that is board counsel that is assigned
Sorry.
to boards. And what they do is they sit there and say, okay, yes, based on what you're presenting, you have enough to be able to do X. Or they could say, no, you don't have enough that anything would hold up in a court of law, so there's nothing we can do. And that's what happened in Maryland. So what Maryland ended up doing is the executive director of the Board of Morticians called the local health department. And the local health department went in and put a stop work order on because of the unsanitary conditions. But the board could not. They weren't within their power to be able to.
Let me ask you something. What I know you don't know, but I mean, in your mind, if he was not disposing of these bodies correctly in a, disposition manner, what did he think was going to end up eventually happening? What was he going to do with all these people?
Look what, again, who knows? Because look what happened in Colorado. We're talking about what, a couple hundred individuals. I know when the coroner and that's a whole other topic we can discuss. The way these loved ones were being, after everything that they've endured, being kept there for who knows how long, and then the undignified transfers out of that funeral home into the stands with no cot cover. Now they were in body,
Yes, I saw that.
but there's no cot covers. It looked like 2 to 3 bodies were being placed in triangles in these bands, and it's just like, this is absurd. Where's the professionalism?
I agree.
It'd be interesting to see what's going to happen to these people. And I saw, what about the ones that wanted to still have traditional funerals?
Yeah.
The ones that were waiting to, actually have a viewing for their loved ones.
And I didn't see anybody really say, like, I've seen in the comments, I haven't said anything, but you see people commenting saying these families didn't smell this, they didn't ask about the time frames. We don't know what that funeral home told these people. Exactly. I do not find those families, they're clueless. They're in a time of grief. They're trusting what this place is telling them.
The biggest problem is and again, it goes back to, like I said earlier, this is why it's so important for us to continue to educate and operate, for us to teach transparency, because others, and for all the people that are saying, we're exploiting grieving families in their time of need, or we're taking advantage of people because we're talking about this on social media. No, we're not. Because had some of these families probably followed you, followed me, followed Catherine, they would know something's not right.
Yeah.
A lot sooner. Not saying we would have been heroes by any means.
I know what you mean.
But education is power.
And it's going to take a lot to get that trust back that one funeral home could destroy.
Oh, absolutely. I saw somebody in here put a comment up a little bit ago that all this is going to do is possibly cause people now not to want to look for cremation, because again, we've lost the trust.
You're going to have those bad apples, though, in any industry you're in.
Anywhere. 100%.
It's
Whether you're
just
a
that we're
doctor,
dealing with people's loved ones. That's what's making it so national. You know what I mean?
yeah.
If it was a manager of a restaurant that they found cockroaches, it wouldn't be made as big. But we're dealing with people's children. Every last person in there has a parent.
Every person in that every loved one that's in their that was in their care um, is just those families have gone through enough. And some of the concern I have after talking with the funeral director several on for
Mm-hmm.
me is that so in Illinois you get a call. Let's say the funeral home gets the call
Mm-hmm.
and they can't make contact with the next of kin. I don't go out unless I make contact with the next of kin. I don't bring a person into my care. I
No.
don't have permission to do so. But apparently those funeral homes can and they're within the law.
See, I don't
So
know the laws on the funeral home side of that.
and understand this, every state is governed completely different
Mm-hmm.
with rules, regulations, and statutes. But they would go out, and from what I understand, is a lot of these individuals were, indigent or medical assistant cases,
Mm-hmm.
where Medicaid would pay an X amount for cremation.
Mm-hmm.
So my wonder is, and again, this is going to come out when they start doing a deep dive into financials. How many of these were just indigent cremations that were paid by the government, but cremation had never been performed?
Yeah. And
So
just
they
to
have a different level of fraud.
think that these families are going into there to identify their loved ones when they could be in whatever decomposition state as long as they're identifiable. That that will haunt these people for the rest of their lives.
I would hope that they would not be forced to do
Mm-hmm.
the identification based on the fact that before the loved ones are released back to these families a second time,
Mm-hmm.
that the Cook County medical examiner they're not releasing until they've identified the remains. So in that case, I would not subject a family to having to do that identification. I would get the identification signed off on or something stating that this individual, these remains were positively identified by the Office of the Medical Examiner.
Yeah.
And I think any respectable crematory would accept
Oh,
identification by
definitely.
the medical examiner. You know what I mean?
We do now. I
Exactly.
mean,
I would
you
not
know,
subject the family to more undue stress and, trauma than they need.
the whole situation is just heartbreaking to me. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to it again, but it just irritates me to no end that this man wasn't in jail
I
already.
get it. So Tammy said with indigent, they don't get the cremated remains, correct? I can only speak for Maryland in regards to this, but if a person is not claimed by a funeral home and the individual is sent to the Maryland State Anatomy Board as unclaimed, if no one steps forward, the state will perform the cremation, and the cremated remains are not eligible to be reclaimed by the family. And then once a year, the state perform what they do is they buy like a burial vault, and then the cremated remains, which are in the temporary urns, which was a black vinyl box, are all placed into one vault and pretty much mass burial in a state cemetery. But I don't know about Illinois' regulations with that. So
Yeah,
again,
I don't know anything about Ohio with it. That's the funeral side. But let me see. In Ohio, some townships return even if they pay. That Kim just said she works at the funeral home now, not
yeah,
where Dan's, but a different one. So I guess
How
in
about you mean
Ohio.
like if it was a financial hardship? I think the difference or the difference is that situation would be like someone stepping forward and like, I want to do what's right for my mom, dad, whomever. I just don't have the financial capabilities of doing so. And they would apply for like a financial hardship,
Hmm.
social services, things like that. Um, so at that point, they're trying to do what's right. And as long as the funeral home's willing to accept whatever the amount is that is agreeable by that township, then so do it. But I believe that these were situations where there were no next of kin,
No,
no
next to kin.
family whatsoever, and they were just sweeping in and, collecting individuals and getting paid from these agencies and then not performing the cremation.
As for the 50 sets of cremated remains they took out of there, were they, I wasn't finding a whole lot of information on it. Were they identified in?
They looked like from the pictures that were shown that they were in boxes that were labeled and things. So, we all know in the funeral profession, we all have a couple sets of cremated remains that
Mhm.
families have just never come back for.
Yeah,
But I mean, I'm talking about one or two.
yeah.
To have 50, that I'm curious, are
That's
those indigent or some more of those indigent cremations?
and those we'll never know. There's no way to test those cremains.
If they're not labeled and they're not
Hmm.
tagged, then my concern is again, it's only going to be as accurate as the records of the crematory, because hopefully those cremated remains will have the identification disc affixed
Hmm.
or in the bag or something like that, and then they could go back to whether it be National Bohemian or your crematory and say, hey, disc number 12345, who was that?
I've found that not all, I never knew this. I thought all crematories use those identification discs, and they don't. In the crematory operators group and people that I've had comment on my posts, they've never had a coin. And it's baffling to me that they don't all use them. I mean, most of them do, but there are some that don't. Is that,
That's insane. Because
yeah.
you're running two machines. Yes, we keep everything completely separate. So you know, when I cremated, I used a Matthews Super Power Pack. I
Hmm.
had a front loading. I could load to the front and I could push out and then finish raking out. I had a rear door that I could pull out from.
Yeah.
And as everything comes down through my funnel, I could take and then I put take my collection bin and I'd set it on a cooling rack. But
Hmm.
even those cooling racks were separated. But the disc remained inside those cremated remains. Because who's
Yeah.
to say I'm doing something else, somebody else comes in and moves something or shifts something around, and Mr. Smith should have been on rack one, but Miss Jones should be on rack two, but now they've been interchanged.
Yeah. Yeah. I was speechless when I found that out. That doesn't make sense to me either. And for them to say that, and I'm jumping from topic to topic here. So,
No, you're fine.
and the people that were given rock spec for cremated remains, did you see that?
Yeah, I can't figure that out. That almost looked like looking at the bag when they
Mm-hmm.
put it out on the article. It reminded me. Remember, like rock salt you use for bad weather.
Yes.
That's what I saw.
So where's the individual at?
That's
Is it part of the 57?
we. They'll find out when they get a call from the Cook County office of the medical examiner. And again,
To
this
have
is it's going to get worse.
to have to wait and sit, wondering if your child is sitting in there. I don't know.
So see
To
somebody
me, it's disgusting.
asking about a will or about how. I'm trying to go back in the comment here and see.
Let me see.
So it's I believe they ask about viewing in their home. So Nick
You know
says,
what? Saw that at one point. I'm scrolling back too.
"Can I have a viewing in my house? If so, how can I make that happen?" So you absolutely can have a viewing in your house, a visitation in your house. I know for those of the Hindu or Sikh faith, we would actually bring the loved one into our care, prepare them, place them in a casket, and then on occasion take them back to the residence. They would remain there overnight, and their family would sleep there with them. Then the next day, come to the funeral home, have prayers and ritual, and then we would go to the crematory for the witnessing of the cremation. Now, I do see where you ask about how can I make it happen that way no one can change it. So a lot of people will sit there and say, put it in a will, put it in, if you do prearrangements that, you're bound by the prearrangement contract. However, as I explained to you folks that pre-planned with me, you want to be cremated, that's absolutely fine. But when you pass away, even though you prepay for cremation, when you pass away, that right of disposition goes to the surviving spouse or the legal next of kin. If they, as the person that's authorized to direct the disposition, want to change that disposition, they absolutely can. I can't force them to do something they don't want to do. Now, if there's a discrepancy between two individuals that share that right of disposition, so say the surviving spouse has passed away and then you pass away, so you just have your two children, and your two children are in disagreement about cremation. One wants cremation, the other does not. Guess what? Even if I have something in writing saying you want to be cremated, I do not cremate. You, this has to be something that is settled with the court. The person in the black robe is going to sit there and say, no, this is the wishes of the individual, and they're to be cremated. Because if I perform the cremation and your brother or sister still ticked off, they're going to sue you, and they're going to sue me, and then they're going to sue the crematory. And now, do you know the difference between wrongful cremation and breach of contract?
Explain it. No, I don't. I'm not like following you here. In different wording, maybe.
So if somebody sits there and they prearranged with me to be cremated, but because there's a disagreement with the family and I refuse to perform the cremation, technically I'm in breach of contract. So, but if I perform the cremation and then someone deems that the argument from the party that did not want cremation to be performed is correct, now I performed wrongful cremation. Follow?
Okay, now would the crematory operator know this?
No, this is going to boil down to the funeral home.
Okay.
So the difference between wrongful cremation and breach of contract is simple. Breach of contract, the maximum that the funeral home can be forced to pay back is the amount of the contract. That's the total amount of damages that can be received. However, wrongful cremation, the gentleman in the black robe or the 12 jurors decide how many zeros need to go on the check to the family. So I'd rather have to deal with breach of contract any day of the week and twice on Sunday than wrongful cremation.
Yeah, understandable.
And a lot of people don't understand that.
I wanted to answer Wanda real quick because she asked way back up there, could two individuals that were cremated at the same crematory look different? And yes, Wanda, they can. You're going to get different shades of cremains. They're not going to be exactly the same. I hope that if that's what you're referring to, as in like the shade of the cremains, and that was a while back. So if she's still in here, if that's not what she meant, please let me know.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a bunch of different factors that can be involved in, even down to medication that individuals are taking. could affect the coloring of the
Yes.
cremated remains. I've
One was
seen.
light and one was very dark. Yes.
But then, have you ever seen when you're repositioning different color flames? Like I've seen
Yes.
green flames, I've seen almost purple tints and flames and things like that as
Oh,
well.
you should have seen my plastic burning that day on the chamber floor. That was bright. But
I saw you live about that.
oh, that was crazy. But we did find out it was PVC pipe, the plastic PVC, and a plastic chest plate. Dan spoke with the embalmer that took care of that individual. It was a bone donor.
Now, see, that's crazy because there are some like we couldn't even cremate certain. So for those that aren't aware, crematories also they have to have a license to operate by their licensing board, but also you have to have a permit by your. Well, do you do like Ohio Department of the Environment or like
No,
really?
no, we don't have like somebody had asked me if this is what you're talking about. We don't do any of like, oh, what did the kid ask me the other day? If we get the medical farms, like the body farms, when they, what did they call it? And I didn't know what it was called because I've never gotten them.
Like anatomical donation cases?
Yeah, and things like that, where then they get cremated and sent back to the families.
Yeah, so if they donated for like donation to science or medical
Yeah,
school,
I don't, we don't have any of that kind
right?
of stuff.
But you should have a like. Well, I know in Maryland, so we had a. You have to have a permit from Maryland Department of the Environment. That's your air quality permit.
The
So
EPA?
yes.
Yeah.
So sometimes now those permits regulate what you can and cannot actually cremate.
Mm-hmm.
And like PVC, we were not allowed to cremate
Mm-mm.
PVC or certain types of body bags because of the materials they were made out of, because of the potential pollutants that would go up through the stack, which you and I both know as operators, the only thing going up that stack, unless you're doing something wrong or equipment malfunction, is heat and water vapor.
Yes.
Everything
Now,
burns up in the second chamber.
now, of course, and you never know who to believe, irregardless, it happened, but, they blame the donor center for doing it, and then the embalmer, yeah, so it just goes back and forth. So nothing, I'm just curious as to why, though, anybody would have sent me an individual full of plastic to cremate.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the crazy part. And I know, like we would when a loved one would come into us, if it was an embalmed case, say it was like a cloth covered casket, things like that. We would always, we open the bag, if even if it wasn't an embalmed case, we open the bag, we check the paperwork, we make sure there's an identification tag that's attached to the long bone, and then we then do our own identification tag and attach it too. So there's two tags now attached for when it comes time for cremation. I can see that whoever checked, because I wasn't the individual that checked that person in.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that the process was followed, that the funeral home has an identification tag attached, and then that we have an identification attached. So they checked this. They checked this person in properly. And then there's the paperwork that corresponds to that. And then we would actually take a metal detector and we wand the individual because of
Mm-hmm.
pacemakers
Yeah.
to make sure the medical devices are removed. Because one of the things, like, yes, I'm a licensed funeral director, but when I'm at the crematory, I'm not operating as a funeral director. I'm operating as a crematory operator.
Mm-hmm.
Crematory operators do not have the authority to remove pacemakers from loved ones.
I remove them all the time.
Do you really?
Mm-hmm. And I actually, we
you're
went
allowed to in
to,
Ohio?
yes, because we went to a laws and regulations class a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And that was one of the questions that was brought up that I was going back and forth. Oh, hold on. It's making me do that puzzle piece to show them a person. Okay. Sorry. As if we had the authority to remove those. And yes, we did.
Okay.
I don't know how many pacemakers that is not written on the authorizations.
So there, and that's just lazy funeral directors not asking the
Oh,
questions that
yes.
need to be asked. That just
Yeah.
shows to show when it comes. It's probably most of the time it's probably a direct cremation where the funeral director wants to sit down and hurry up and rush through it in 15 minutes because they was like, oh, this is just a direct cremation. I can do this arrangement. And that's not what it's about. But that's good for you guys because in Maryland the operators cannot
Really.
remove the pacemaker.
Well, look in New York. I found out they're not even allowed to open the cremation containers. That to me is crazy. Yeah. And
So who's
Kim,
responsible for
the one
identification?
that's in here, Kim and I had to look that up because we didn't believe it. The funeral directors are responsible for everything. I am sorry, but knowing what I know from, and no offense to any funeral directors, but you know which ones that, like with the pacemakers, that don't disclose that.
Yeah.
I'm not cremating if I can't see that identification on that individual and I don't know what is in that box. Plain and simple. You
100%.
In New York, you're not allowed. The crematory operators are not allowed to open the cremation container.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had to Google that because we were like so baffled by that.
So let me ask you this one. So I've run across as a crematory operator, individual comes in, they're in our care, they're being checked in by an outside funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
Doing our check-in procedure, we notice in the bottom of the cremation container there is a bag of viscera.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the individual that is to be cremated has not been autopsied.
I just had this situation probably about a year ago.
I am not.
We returned the viscera to the funeral home.
Yep, I'm not cremating that viscera. That is not that individual.
We just had that happen about a year ago. We sent it back.
And that again, it's like, why did you do that? I am not the medical waste disposal facility.
Yeah.
I'm not.
And that person going in that chamber is not trash.
Exactly.
To be disposing of your trash.
And that's why I do not like referring to a retort as an incinerator.
I've never referred to it as that either.
But many people that argue that cremation is harmful for the environment and does this, that, and the third, they continue to refer to the cremation machine, the retort, as an incinerator. And I explain simply, we're not cremating trash.
Mm-mm.
So it's not an incinerator.
No. I'll take out gloves that, like, if a funeral home brings me an individual and there's gloves laying in there from the funeral, I'll take all that stuff out because it's not a trash can.
No. And then how many times and again, we talk about it all the time. Even for me, I don't use the empty fluid bottles as armrests or arm props for a casket. And if it's a cremation, prior to going to the crematory, I remove the styrofoam arm blocks.
I get them a lot.
Because trying to then sort out melted, stucky styrofoam that's like marshmallow out of cremation paints is a nightmare.
Oh, I take it out and throw them away all the time. They're left in there.
Yeah. It's just, why is it that the funeral directors don't care?
I can't answer that.
Because is it one of those, this is not my problem to worry about anymore?
Yes, Kim. Kim just mentioned we had a funeral home where I worked before when she was my boss. We would get cremations brought to us with a ton of phone books. Like a ton of phone books. And we were taking them out because they were putting phone books to get rid of in those cremation containers. It makes no sense.
Tammy asked if a loved one, I don't like using the term bodies, guys, just so you guys know. If a loved one's being donated to science, do they have to go to a funeral home first? It depends. again, Maryland, and again, I can speak for Maryland and Pennsylvania. In Maryland, the Maryland State Anatomy Board or the donation organization have their own transportation personnel. So they will go to the place of death and they will bring the individual directly into their care. Now, Pennsylvania does not. And because the state is so big, what will happen is most times you will contract with a local funeral home that will come bring the person into their care, keep them until the donation facility can come bring them into their care. But there are requirements. So the person has to be kept in refrigeration immediately. Their body can't be out over a certain amount of time in certain elements and temperatures because it would disqualify them. Now, once you were registered and accepted into these programs, because a lot of people may have registered when they were younger. So when they get older, they might not be considered viable for donation, but that does not mean that they're just going to say, no, we're not going to accept you, you're not in the program, anything like that. They will still bring you in, but you will just go directly to the crematory, and then the cremated remains will be returned to the family.
It's just, I don't know. We're jumping all over the place, and I'm glad because my mind's in 100 places.
No, and it looks like it's just based off the questions. But again, going back to the Chicago, and then I just put the story about Tennessee. You know, the guy
I
was
didn't see Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee. I posted that I think yesterday. Monday Funeral Home. They went in and suspended the license of the funeral director and this funeral establishment. Because again, and a gentleman, I'll tag you in the comment when we're done.
Okay.
The actual son that started this commented on my post, and his name's Wade Stockton. He has cremated remains that he received back, and it's not his mom because his mother was not picked up to from the crematory until after. He had already received remains.
Oh.
Through the further inspection and examination after Mr. Stockton's complaint, there's financial discrepancies because there have been fake death certificates issued and death claims filed with pre-need organizations to receive funds for at least, I believe it was 5 or 7 folks that are still alive.
And we wonder why we're not trusted.
Yep. Every time we turn around, we're seeing more and more.
And I think, and I've seen comments where crematory operators have posted in the groups and stuff that they're closed to the general public. They don't give tours. And I will stand by the fact that I say if you cannot give a tour at any time, you might have to say, hold on, I need to, put some identifying information away or things like that. But then that is a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a person that is, staged on a loader to be able to go in to the retort, a family, it's going to take you a couple minutes to put somebody back in the refrigeration. It's not going to take you 2 hours because you're trying to do something, do this, do that. Biggest pet peeve, I walk into a crematory and I see the processor isn't being cleaned out after each individual processing. You walk in and you see a shop vac or something. That's a little bit of a concern. What are you shop backing up stuff? Like what's the issue there?
Just so you know, we have a shop vac at our thing because we have a flower shop and John uses it in there. Just wanted you to know that for that.
But if I opened up that shop vac, I'm not going to see.
You're not finding anything in it. No, nothing for me.
But sadly, these things happen, and it's people that are just a lot of time. And here's the thing: funeral service, I equate, I remember hearing it very early on in my career that funeral service is broken down like look at different levels of hotels. You have Ritz
Hmm.
Carlton all the way down to, Best Westerns and things like that. There is a
Hmm.
brand for everyone and for everyone's price point. But there are also the no-tell motels. And there are a lot of unscrupulous people in the funeral profession. I tell folks all the time, you need to go and shop your funeral homes.
Hmm.
Find out, if they have a crematory, you need to ask, hey,
Yeah.
can I see your crematory? Can I,
Oh, I think he paused us, guys. There
what did
he
I do?
is. You paused us.
I didn't touch anything.
Honestly, I don't know. Anyway,
TikTok. Um,
yeah.
go, you take tons of time to go, research cars before you purchase a car. You
Hmm.
do tons of homework. Do the same when it comes to funeral service. And
Hmm.
if you don't feel comfortable, I want to let you know something. You do not have to stay at that funeral home. You don't have to stay with that crematory.
No, you don't.
Take your loved one and go where you feel comfortable. Listen to
Yeah,
your gut. You go into a funeral
absolutely.
home, there's a horrible odor. That is a big red flag.
Oh, yeah.
You go to a crematory and they say, nope, we don't allow tours to the public.
Then you go somewhere else.
Ask why.
Yeah. I mean, I've had people tell me that I'm lying on my post, like the one post or the video I have put up where somebody asked me is can you smell people, this is their word, can you smell people burning when they're in there? No.
I've never had the smell
Thank
at a
you.
crematory.
And they're like, well, when I was here and I was here, I we did, and if,
No.
well, I don't know where you were, but no, that there shouldn't. Maybe every now and then when you reposition, but that is it.
And I mean, but even then, it's very faint.
Hmm.
I have had loading a case into the chamber because the chamber was still hot, where
Hmm.
the box will start to ignite as you're
Hmm.
loading, and
Yeah.
you'll get the cardboard smell. But you do not get burnt flesh. You do not. If you
Nope.
smell decomposition in a crematory, 9 out of 10 times that means they have a decomped individual, and
Hmm.
it's maybe
In the
they're
cooler, and there's nothing you can do about it. Waiting on paperwork.
yes, or they're not even in the cooler because they've taken in too many cases that they can't handle.
I was gonna say I don't do that one, but yeah.
So somebody asked, when they pass, can they pick a crematory I want out of town and prepay before I die? I
Somebody
would,
asked me that too.
so in Ohio, Mel, do you have to be a licensed funeral establishment to be able to solicit to the general public?
Yes. Well, no, I don't know. There has to be a licensed funeral director.
Okay.
Like
So
I get cases from PA, but they're through the different funeral homes.
right, but you couldn't just through your. So
No, a
what's the name
family
of the
can't come into
crematory?
the crematory.
Right, they can't
But
come to you. What's the name of the crematory that you?
Omega.
So Omega, they can't pick up the phone and call Omega directly and deal directly with you. They have to go through
No.
a third party.
Yes.
So you would have to check the state.
With the funeral home to see if they used that crematory, or I don't know how else a family could find out which different crematories use.
Call the funeral home. What crematory do you use? Or call the crematory you want to use. So you could call Omega Crematory and say, Mel, I want to be cremated by you. What funeral home do I need to call to make sure I come through your care?
I wonder. I've never Googled, I mean, Omega. I know at my last job, you'd be very lucky if you could find the phone number to the crematory, which was okay because that place was amazing. Um, but the crematories aren't generally listed in, say, the yellow pages of Google. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you had like an authorization form or something.
Now, I mean, it's got its own EIN or something like that. You could
Yeah,
Google
there's,
it and look it up. Um,
yeah.
Now, some chillin asked, can I ask, how do you know about Maryland? So I am a Maryland licensed mortician. I'm licensed in the state of Maryland. I'm also a licensed funeral director in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Funeral director license in Pennsylvania allows me to do both funeral direct and embalm. So Maryland, a mortician's license allows you to funeral direct and embalm. I'm also a licensed crematory operator in Maryland, and I actually ran and managed 5 funeral homes and a crematory in the state of Maryland before taking the role I know now, or am in. So that's how I know about Maryland.
And if you don't follow him, chillin', follow him. They put out some great content over there.
Somebody asked, why were we asked to identify our pawpaw at the crematory before he was cremated? Do you want to answer that one, Mel?
Well, that I don't normally, if I have an identification viewing, the funeral home or the funeral director or a representative of the funeral home is with that individual who is doing the identification. So in all reality, they're doing it for the funeral home. Does that make sense how I'm explaining it?
Yeah.
Like I can't have Joe Smith over here call and say, "Hey, I want to come identify my loved one."
Right.
I don't know who the authorizing agents are. You can't come in here. So that would be more of them coming with the funeral home.
Now, so if say it's a direct
Okay,
cremation.
say it's a here. I think I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Let me try this again. Say I had somebody come to me from the coroner's office or the medical examiner, and that family member, they're just not accepting that their loved one is that person the medical examiner is saying. They might want to come see for themselves and do that identification viewing. That's like one instance that a family would come in and do that.
Yeah, and then because so if if I'm a contracted, if you're my contracted crematory now, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
direct cremation, does the loved one go to the funeral home first, or
Not
would it
always.
come directly to you?
Some funeral homes, they come directly to us, and some funeral homes take them back to the funeral homes first. I have
So is
one that they all come straight to us if they're a direct cremation.
so is
And
identification not required prior to cremation in Ohio?
yes, it says on the authorization, photo ID'd by so and so, or it tells you which way they identified that individual. Now, what the state comes in and does is like, now this, you know what, and this might answer my question. I've wondered why. The last time the state came in, they said, I am not allowed to accept a medical examiner, a coroner's office, a nursing home, or a hospital's identification. It has to be identification from the funeral home that is on the decedent, which would be when the transfer staff, we have what is called like identification and witness of transfer.
Right.
When, say, Joe goes and picks Mrs. Smith up at that house, he puts that identification on Mrs. Smith, and then the family member signs off on the form along with any possessions or inventory on that person, and that transport person is acting as the representative of the funeral home.
Right. So the identification is being made by the
Yes.
authorizing agent. It's just not to a funeral director, it's to a representative.
Yes.
But in a situation where the person passes away in a hospital and they're
Mm-hmm.
discharged out through the morgue and there's no next of kin there, Do they then have to come to your facility and perform an identification?
Or they can do it by photo as well.
So
Photo
does
identification.
so I so are in
I do
Ohio
take a lot of identification photos.
and can operators can set features to
No.
so they're it's just how they are.
Yes, I mean, I will try to close eyes. I mean, I'll do the best. I will clean them off.
But you're not
I
using ligature, you're not using
No,
eye caps, mouth formers.
no, nothing like that.
Why wouldn't the
I'll put
funeral
a
director that has to do like me as a funeral director, if I had to do that, I'm coming to you and say, "Hey Mel, I need to swing by real quick. I need to set features on Mr. Smith
mm-hmm,
real fast, and then I need to take a picture." You
yeah.
know, because I mean, that could lead to someone claiming for like post traumatic stress that the situation that they're presented in or something.
I really can't answer on that end.
That's
I
what the funeral
mean,
director.
yeah, if it was a really bad off situation, I'm sure, you know,
Yeah,
that they would come and do that. Those I don't send the photos to the families. They go to the
right.
funeral home.
No, absolutely.
So if they saw that photo and thought, oh, you know what, this person, I do my best to make them viewable. A lot of times if I can elevate their head, it'll sometimes push their mouth closed, or I'll close the mouth with my hand and then crop my finger out.
But
There's
that's what you do.
different
So
ways.
you put a sheet over a person, and
Yeah.
your hands under you're in a glove under the sheet. You know what I mean?
Didn't think about that one, Chris.
There's
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
head block.
things. There's things I can do. Like I will wash their face. I mean, I have dry wash in the crematory. Should I need, I do the best I can when it comes to that.
Well, that speaks volumes to you because you care. There's
Yeah,
a lot of people that don't care.
and I would hope nobody, if it was really bad, would send a funeral director would send that photo to a family if it was traumatic. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But for the most part, we
I'm
haven't.
really confused then.
Huh?
So the just Trey who asked about why they would have to identify at the crematory, she just put a comment in and said we had already identified him, then had to do it again at the crematory.
Maybe that is something on the back end of the funeral home, or
The
like if
crematory would be
say maybe
required.
the transfer team forgot to put ID on didn't put the ID on or something of that nature. They are just double checking and making sure they had the right individual, then would be my guess.
Somebody asks if you have a family member to next of kin to identify who is it. I don't understand the question.
I
Chilling.
can't. I'm not scrolling. Let me see. For hospice at home deaths, how do you really want this? Do you still show? See, I can't find the
It's
one you're
right
looking at,
above.
Chris.
It's right above the one about sewing the mouth closed.
Okay, and that's where I stopped. Let me scroll a little bit farther.
So while Mel's scrolling, Trey, we do not sew. We suture. Um, there are numerous methods for closing the mouth. There's a muscular closure where you would take ligature and use and go up and down to keep the mouth closed. There is a needle injector that can be used, which would be into the mandible and maxilla, and then you tie those together to keep the mouth closed. Um, but suturing is a method that is utilized, and so is the needle injector. It really depends on the mouth structure of the individual on what method I would use prior to setting features.
My guess is chillin is, if I had to guess what it was, is if there is no next of kin who, I honestly don't know. Chillin, I tried to look at that.
So it looks like he's saying, or he or she is saying, I guess if there is no family member,
That's what I would think.
so in so from funeral law, every state has different statutes. So understand there's a difference between regulations and statutes. So your statutes are your laws, and then your boards take the laws and they put regulations in place. So regulations cannot be more lax than statutes. But most statutes have what we would call as lineage right of disposition, which is a prescribed outline that we have to follow. So right now, the person I pass away sitting here right now, my wife, Michelle, is here's my biggest thing. That is not my next of kin. Kin is a blood relation, and I'm not married to my blood relation. That is my surviving spouse. So just that's my side soapbox and useful information tonight. After my surviving spouse, in absence of her, becomes your next of kin. So then you have adult children. In absence of all adult children, would then, if your parents are still alive, go to your parents. In absence of your parents, would then go to your siblings, and so on, to eventually, there's no one. Mel knows me. She could say, you know what? I don't want to see Chris be, unclaimed. I'm going to step forward and take care of this because he has absolutely no one. But we, as the funeral directors, have to go through that list to make sure we're not skipping anybody in that order, because that's where lawsuits or wrongful cremation can happen.
Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to read, see if there's anything.
Somebody asked, how does a decedent look when they've been buried since 1982? It depends on the skill of the embalmer. It really does. Weather, the conditions of where they're buried. There's a lot of variables that would go into the condition there. There you go, Mel. Florida Mike asked.
Now I'm not even going to entertain that because I just did a video on that.
Okay.
And everybody's beliefs on this are going to be different. I do not believe that it is. Yeah. I do not believe that it is. And if I honestly thought it was, I wouldn't be cremated. Because I know where I'm going.
I want to here's the thing. I want a full traditional viewing, and then I want to be cremated.
Yeah.
I still see the value of a viewing and visitation, and that is not just because I'm a funeral director, but because of the psychology classes and the grief classes I've taken. There is truly a benefit of being able to say goodbye to an individual.
Yes.
I'm a huge proponent in that. Even if it's direct cremation, I'm a big proponent of a private family ID, just to have that last goodbye.
Yeah, and I don't mind. I don't mind answering that question because none of us. We can all give our opinions on that. Is cremation a sin? But that's going to fall down to one person's beliefs. It's not going to be everybody's not going to have the same beliefs.
And I actually had a conversation. So I was lucky enough to do a Jewish funeral. And I asked the rabbi. We were on our way to the cemetery, and I asked the rabbi. I said, "Rabbi, why is it forbidden, or why is it against the Jewish religion to be cremated?" And he looked at me and said, "Chris, it's not." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't know any Jewish person that's ever been cremated." And he goes, "Do you know why?" I said, "I thought it was against your religion. I thought it was against the Torah." And he goes, "No." He goes, I want to ask you a question. What happened to all of our Jewish ancestors during the Holocaust? The bodies were just mass cremated. So they didn't want that perpetual reminder of the
which is
pain, the suffering that
understandable.
they endured. That's why they do,
Hmm.
but it's not against their religion.
Interesting.
The Catholic Church, Vatican II, Pope John Paul II, he had the different stance on cremation, and that's where it became acceptable for cremation to take place within the Catholic Church. Now there are requirements.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to separate the
I
cremated
still want to
remains.
be brought home,
Yeah, you're supposed
but
to
I
have
believe I'm still going to
the
heaven.
buried. Yeah, and again, everybody has their own beliefs, and you have to be comfortable in your own skin, so to speak. There's no
Yeah.
right. I tell families this all the time. There's absolutely no right or wrong. There's only what's right for you.
Yes. And
Don't
that's
let
why I
other
didn't want to
people.
go down the religious debate, because it's going to be what they believe in their heart. If they believe it's a sin, if they don't, because I believe that I'm going to heaven no matter which way my final disposition is.
Um, Jenny asks, "Is it law to be embalmed?" No, you do not have to be embalmed. Direct cremation, there's no requirement for embalming. Actually, it's in the FTC that we cannot require legally, if you choose direct cremation or immediate burial, that you have embalming. Now, some states, so in Pennsylvania, if we do not have the ability to refrigerate an individual, after 24 hours, if we cannot have disposition performed in that time, we would have to cremate the loved one, or we would have to transfer them somewhere else that has refrigeration. Every state's going to be different, but the FTC says you do not have to be charged for direct burial or direct cremation or embalming.
Yeah, I think Ohio it's 24 hours too, and the crematory's 8 hours without refrigeration.
Now, here's my question: is it 8 hours from the time of death,
I don't
or
know. I was wondering that. I
you
would.
receive them?
I was questioning this myself yesterday when I was sitting thinking about it.
Because I told, so for us in Maryland, you had 72 hours to refrigerate the embalm or perform disposition. And then my question was, okay, that's in the funeral home statute. Now, crematories are in a separate statute and a set of regulations. So does the clock then restart because it's now a different location? Because you're no longer in the funeral home's care and custody. You're technically in Omega's care and custody. So is it 8 hours from the time that they came into your care? And that's where they go, oh, I don't know. But you're the ones enforcing the rules. But you can't tell me the clarification of the statute?
Yeah, yeah. I would honestly have to go look at my notes from this last laws and regulations class I just took about a month ago. And I was thinking about it yesterday. I don't remember if that was from the time of death. It would have to be from the time the individual got to the crematory, though, because they could have been at the funeral home. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that, Chris.
But it's stuff like that that makes you wonder. And that's where
Yeah.
that's where you could get caught up if you don't understand your laws and your regulations. Words matter too. If the is in a place or is or the way, the context of the law, because the laws are all made for interpretation, which they shouldn't be. The law should be black or white, but they're not, and that's the problem. And that's where I think we're going to have problems with the outcome in Chicago. I think they're no matter how they portray this, the individuals that own that facility are 110% in the wrong. They're despicable. The families that were taken advantage of, and here's the thing, it's probably going to be a situation too where even if the folks are found guilty, is what are the criminal charges, or is this all going to be civil matters?
No, they should be charged for each individual they had in that facility. Of course, that's just my opinion.
So somebody was saying about mishandling of a corpse. And you'd have to really read into the regulations and find out if does that apply post burial or pre burial? Who would that apply to? Because I mean, if we embalm someone without permission,
Hmm.
technically we can be charged with mutilation.
And letting them sit there and decompose, you'd think that would be the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The same type of scenario.
agreed. And it really makes you wonder, how long is this going to take before, why aren't there criminal charges from the first incident last year? This could have
Yeah.
all been avoided.
Yes.
You know,
And I'm sorry, but it's not like we don't have proof. I mean, where they're trying to prove someone's guilty. Your proof is right in front of you.
you have it. You had
Yeah.
the proof a year ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Heaven Bound situation, that was 2 years ago. They were not officially charged with anything until about 2 months ago.
And that's crazy.
And Mel, let me tell you something. That situation with those individuals, we're only talking, I believe it was like 13 or 14 individuals, because my mind's not right there right now. But a good majority of those 13 individuals, some of them were infants, some of them were children.
It doesn't
And,
matter if there was one
and but
individual.
and guess who had to take care of those cremations?
Hmm.
Me, our staff, because we held the contract for the state, and the state's the one that took those over.
Well,
It was absolutely despicable. And same situation here. It's just absolutely sickening that individuals like this are allowed to continue to practice. And I don't want to beat the drum and say, low cost providers this, low cost providers that, because you know what, guys, there are some very reputable low cost providers. Please
oh,
do not.
definitely. I cremate for a couple of them that I know. Absolutely.
And
I would trust them with my loved ones.
their goal is
Hmm.
they from the mindset of a low cost provider is that
Hmm.
we can provide the low cost because we're going to make it up in volume.
Yeah.
But they have the infrastructure in place. They partner with crematories like yourself that
Hmm.
can handle that flow, that volume,
Yeah.
that amount of workload. They're not trying to just take it all in on their own. And I'm sure if there ever got to a point, and we all saw it back in 2020, there were times where we would tell people we are at capacity. We
Oh, yeah.
cannot take any.
People were over capacity at that point. I mean, and there was nothing they could do.
Well, even then, but it was, we knew what our limit was.
Hmm.
And but you have some providers, Mel. You have some cremation providers that it's
Yeah.
just keep bringing them in the door, keep bringing them in the door. But you know as well as I do, you can only cremate a certain number of individuals in
Hmm.
a day. There's
Oh,
only
yeah.
24 hours in a day.
And there's
To,
only two chambers.
there's two chambers, and I mean, so you can, if you know what you're doing, you can cremate, and I mean, but you've got to look at your cases, you've got to look
Hmm.
at your weights, you've got to map out your day.
Exactly.
You can push the machine. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. And as long as you know what you're doing, because you can go like, do you guys use what the Empire software?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know as well as I do, we can get into as long if you've got the codes, you can get into the backstream. You can override the cooldown method and things like that, and you can go on to the next case if you know what you're doing. But it's up. You've got to know how to cremate properly, and that's so. Someone that's just coming in that just started cremating, do not do that.
Mm-mm.
Let the machine's gonna let the machine do what it does. But
Yeah.
back during COVID, you
I
improvise.
know
You
after
figure it
my
out.
first cremation of the day, if it's 150 pounds, I can, after 10 minutes, clean that out and put my next one in. You know what I mean?
But you're
Now,
not
my
going to
third
turn
one of
around
the day, I would not do that.
and you're not going to turn around and put 250 300
No.
pounds female in
No.
and a 1600 degree chamber, because guess
Yeah.
what's going to happen?
Yep.
Your charts are just going to bury. They're just
Yeah,
going to
and your
bury your
doors are
pencil.
gonna rattle, and yeah,
You're
no.
going to blow a thermocoupler, and I hate it.
Hmm.
The bottom thermocoupler I didn't mind changing, but I hate changing the top with a
Going
passion.
on top of those, why
Yeah.
there are individuals in those chambers
Uh huh.
scares me to death. And well, the chambers I ran before, they weren't on top like that. And so the first time I asked Matthews when I started here, because I worked with FTs before, and I said to them, I said, "Is it okay? It's not gonna like melt my shoes up there, right?" She's like, She said it shouldn't. I'm like, well, what do you mean shouldn't? That's not good enough for me.
It's either yes or no, ma'am.
I
Yes or
never
no.
changed a thermocouple so fast in my life. I was like, no.
And I don't care. It always blows at the most inconvenient time in the middle of the day on a non-cloudy day. It's just it always happens. But again,
Yeah.
and those, I mean, you want to talk about war stories? Those are some war stories. Or even having a witnessing of a cremation for a Hindu family with a
I
high
just had
gloss
one of
casket.
those. With what?
A high gloss casket.
No, I haven't had one of those.
Yeah, that was rough. But again, it's like knowing, and that's why it's important that the funeral home communicates with you, so you know what the person's coming in, so that does that chamber need to be completely cold.
Yeah.
I've seen it before. High gloss casket, and the chamber was still a little warm. Where we've literally just told the family we're going to soak the casket in water.
Really?
You just squirt it down with a hose, put it in, and that when it goes in, that water and all, it adheres to that varnish and that gloss, but it'll come off, and that works a little bit. And I've never had black smoke from it, so that's always a plus.
What's this say? FD here. Why does a high gloss matter?
So depending if the temperature, if it's an afternoon witnessing, and say you don't know that individual is coming in a high gloss casket, that's got bad written all over it.
See, I don't schedule witnessings in the afternoon. Mine are at 9 a.m., so my chambers are not hot.
Really? So if they had a service at the funeral home in the morning, so you wouldn't be able to do witnessings in the afternoon. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you okay over there?
Yep, fell off my stand there.
If I ran into that scenario, which I don't, if I did, I would probably not run that chamber for the day, because I would not want to risk that family seeing anything ignite.
Well, exactly. And that's why having that conversation. So knowing, the type of container that the individual is coming in, the casket, that's always key. Because we would do witnessings up until 2 p.m. But we would know that, because we ran 24 hours a day, because that was the volume that we had. And if we had a witnessing coming in at 2, normally the last case would be pushed out of that retort at 9 a.m. and put into an extended cool down.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wouldn't run the chamber if it ran into that situation. I'd preheat it, but I wouldn't cremate in it.
So the casket, yes, if you bought a cremation casket, the casket goes into the chamber as well. The loved one is not removed from the casket, and the casket isn't just discarded.
I get like one a year.
Really?
Actual caskets.
We would have, we had one funeral home client that every case that came in a casket. And it was a high volume.
I'm not going to give you my opinion on that.
I tell family, rental caskets are the way to go, folks. Rental caskets are the absolute way to. Now, I'm not going to, if you want to get a cremation casket for your loved one, that is completely up to you. However, I tell folks, because here's the secret. As a funeral director, and I can only speak for my firm, whether you choose a rental casket or whether you choose a $30,000 wood casket. My paycheck doesn't change. I'm not a
Yeah.
commissioned salesperson. My job is to help you as the family, present you your options, and you make the decisions. But
Hmm.
rental caskets for cremations or ceremonial caskets are the way to go.
My
Don't
favorite
waste the money.
containers are those rental inserts. They're so much easier to push in.
Yes. Yes, the inserts, or the loved one comes out. I did a if you some people are saying they're following. I don't know if it's in my TikTok feed or not, but it's on my Facebook page. I did a whole video, a quick like 1 minute 30-second video
Hmm.
of like putting together the cremation the rental casket, and showing the insert and how the foot folds down and things like that.
Hmm.
You can go in a pine box. I've done plain pine box for folks the gentleman told his wife he just wanted an unfinished plain pine box. They're absolutely available.
Sweaty, I am in Ohio and he is in Pennsylvania.
Yep. I'm in south central Pennsylvania.
I wonder how far you guys are from here. But geographically, I couldn't tell you. So don't
Yeah.
tell me you're by anything because I wouldn't know where that was. How far are you from Pittsburgh?
4 hours.
I'm about an hour from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we should be. I've been invited out to one of the funeral directors, one of the other funeral directors that's
Hmm.
on social media, Caitlin, that with Coleman Taylor Funeral Home.
Yeah.
September 5th, they're having a big free community luau, and
Hmm.
they're in Cecil, just outside of Pittsburgh. So you should come over to that.
You'll have to send me some information on that.
Yeah, because I'm going to try and get out there for it. And her dad was actually on As the Hearse Turns last night with me, with Dwayne Hills.
Now, is that the blonde lady that was in the video with Catherine?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Florida Mike, I am actually in York, Pennsylvania, sir. That is where I live, and that is where my funeral home is. I am sitting in beautiful York right now.
Hmm.
And Trey says, Mel, you're not too far from her.
Let me see. Florida Mike, that's where I'm moving back to.
I love York County. It's phenomenal. Tammy,
Yeah.
I can't answer that question. Some family members choose to purchase a cremation casket because they don't want their loved one just in a basic cremation container, and that's up to them. There's no requirement for a casket for cremation. Please understand that. You do not have to buy a casket for cremation.
Yeah, don't forget to send me that information about that. Maybe we can meet up with you guys there.
Yeah, I'll text you. Once I get off, I'll text it over to you.
Okay.
Um,
He's 5 minutes from me, and they're a wonderful funeral service. What is that, Wendy?
well, thank you, Wendy.
We're going to start getting dark out here in a minute.
Yeah. So PA does require a minimum alternative container, and that is included in the price of a direct cremation. You do not have to that. So again, going back through the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the funeral rule, when a funeral home offers a direct cremation, it should encompass in that charge the transfer from the place of death within a certain mile radius. So like my charge for direct cremation includes within 20 miles of my funeral home zip code. Okay. It also includes the base. It's a prorated basic service charge of the funeral director and staff, because our theory of why that charge is less is because for a direct cremation, I'm not doing as much, which I argue that sometimes. I'm on the fence about that. But that's why direct cremation is less expensive. The only thing it does not include is cash advance items, such as your death certificates, and it does not include, so in Pennsylvania, depending on the county you pass away in, we have to get a cremation stamp and approval from the coroner, which York County, they charge $50 unless you're a veteran. It's free for them to get permission for the cremation to take place.
Yeah, that's the difference between my paperwork from here in PA is Ohio, we don't have to have a coroner's release unless it's a coroner's case. But I need one for every case out of Pennsylvania.
Correct. And then I did see somebody ask, okay, so I do want to clarify, you are not receiving ashes. They are cremated remains, okay? Ashes are byproduct of like cardboard or remnants of the casket. The cremated remains are bone fragments that are processed down to the granular substance that is received by the families. So you're not receiving ashes. So the folks that use the words ashes, that's not accurate. But the casket will not be part of the cremated remains. The casket should have, if cremated long enough and properly, will all have burnt away. Am I correct, Mel? Or is there
Yes,
anything on that?
absolutely. No, absolutely. I'm glad you're answering because I'm blind as can be to see some of these questions. I'm just trying to read them. My glasses are on my head, but you would see me like up in the phone screen like one big eyeball looking.
So somebody asks, is cremation the cheapest route? It depends. I've seen, so cremation is going to vary demographically by, every funeral home's overhead is different. So you have a funeral home that has a higher overhead, their cost for direct cremation is going to be different than the funeral home down the street. When I have folks from other funeral homes call me and ask me about pricing and things like that, I always tell them, I said, don't chase the other funeral home's price. Your business model is not based off their business model. So you have to price your services according to your expenses. There are different types of cremation. And I want to understand, cremation is a method of disposition. Cremation is not a service. Okay? And what I mean by that is cremation is where we're getting to. So it depends the route we take to get there that dictates what the cost is going to be.
Is it like sand? Yes, it should feel like, I would think it feels sandy, like a texture wise.
To me, cremated remains should look like baby powder, but have a granular texture to it. Because cremated remains should be milky white, essentially. They shouldn't be gray or black. Sometimes if that happens, and if like the bag is, because the bags are clear that the cremated remains are placed in, but sometimes if they turn gray or black, it's because they haven't had adequate time enough to cool. And sometimes people have rushed. That's like the video I posted maybe a month or so ago, Mel, about the family, the cremated remains being added to the urn during the middle of the service, and the urn was still hot.
Yes.
My concern is after the fact is, say they go to open that urn to get some remains out because they want to put them in keepsakes or scatter. That bag's probably going to be pitch black, and those cremated remains are going to be they're going to be tinted. So those are different things there. But again, everybody has a different type of processor. Mel may have different blades on her processor than I have on mine.
I just got new ones, and I was telling Kim, I said it looked like a baby powder. I mean, I was like so impressed with the new blades being put on this. I was like bragging about my cremated remains. I was so happy with the fact that they got changed. I said it looks like baby powder.
And that's the thing. It should be cremated remains that if it's textbook perfect, everything goes according to plan, milky white, there should be a little bit of a granular texture, little like tiny pebbles, but not big. I mean, super,
Hmm.
super tiny. Somebody asked about cardboard again. The alternative container completely is disintegrated.
Hmm.
And those alternative containers, like I said, should be included in the price of direct cremation. Aquamation is not legal in so alkaline hydrolysis. This is what aquamation, the correct term. But alkaline hydrolysis is legal in Maryland. It was signed into law last year. There is one facility that actually has a machine to do so. It is not yet legal here in Pennsylvania. And the same with there's no legal standing in Pennsylvania for natural organic reduction, but it is legal in Maryland. Do you guys have alkaline hydrolysis yet, Mel, in Ohio?
No, it's not legal.
There you go, Mel. How long does it take for the remains to cool?
That's going to depend on how many bones come out after the cremation. I mean, it could, if I have a minimal amount, it could take 20 minutes. But if there's, you can't even go by weight to explain it. If there's a lot more bones that come out, it could
Yeah.
take an hour. There's no definite answer for that.
You know what I did is my rule of thumb and is so if I can go over and I have gloves on, if I can put my
Hmm.
hand and hold my hand for an extended period of time on the
I have
cremated
to be able
remains,
to hold them.
I can process them properly.
Yeah.
If I can't hold them in my hand without ow,
Mm-mm.
they're
Hmm.
not cool to be processed.
Yeah, same. I have to be able to hold them and not, yeah.
Now I have, if it was a rush situation, I have taken and I'll put them in the So remember the old stand-up processors
The
that had
ones
like
that look like the big jugs.
yeah, they had the big drums.
Hmm.
They had those metal pans.
Hmm.
What I would do is I'd empty out my bin into one of those metal pans, attach my
Hmm.
identification information to it, and I put them in the cooler before
Yeah,
to
I've done
expedite
that.
the cool down process.
Hmm. I've done that before. It's been a while, but only on a major rush that, you know,
So somebody asked, "What do you mean by the number of bones that come out?"
the amount of bone, not so much the number of bones, but how do I want to explain this? You know what I'm saying, Chris, but I don't.
So in the cremation process, as I mentioned before, the term ashes is incorrect because you get bone fragments. So as cremation, the full body is loaded into the chamber. The cremation process begins, and then what happens is over time, through intense heat, that's broken down, and the skin, the organs, everything else is gone. So the skeletal system is intact. So what Mel talks about when she says repositioning, we crack that door and we have a long rake and we go in and we have to rake that machine. And that kind of breaks up the skeletal system or the skeletal structure. And then we pull that back under that primary burner, that primary flame to continue cremating and kind of making those bones brittle. And then once the process is done, all of that is pushed out, swept out of the machine, goes into a collection bin, which is the bones of the individual. And then once they are safe and cool and we can touch them, they go through a processor that essentially grinds the bone fragments into the small granular pieces that are given back as cremated remains. That's what she means by bones. So bone density is only going to apply to the volume of the cremated remains that you receive. So big guy like myself, but I'm 5'11", but someone else that may be 180 pounds and 5'11", just because of my fluffiness, does not mean I'm going to yield greater amounts of cremated remains. Our bone structure for someone that is 5'11" at 300 pounds and someone that is 5'11" at 180 pounds is exactly the same. So just because someone is 300, 400 pounds does not mean they're going to get more cremated remains back. That's the only thing bone density has to do with cremation. It's that dictates the volume of cremated remains you'll receive. But no, it's almost 8:00. I know you got stuff to do. My wife put the dog out on the porch, so I think that's my sign.
Yeah.
And
well, I am so glad you came. And everybody, if you don't follow Chris, go ahead and give him a follow. It was a great conversation, and I appreciate you coming on with me.
And thank you for having me. And I know we were all over the place, but those are some of the best conversations, honestly. And then now that Catherine's back, I see she just jumped in here. Yeah, she's in the chat. Once she gets settled and all like that, what we'll do is we'll set up a time and we'll do a live on. I don't think you can say the other platform on TikTok without them cutting you off.
I don't know.
But the Book of Face, we can, we'll have Mel on there live with us one night, and we'll continue these conversations. It would be a blast. I think you and Catherine would have a blast too talking.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Chris. And that being said, I've got to use the restroom so bad for about an hour now. So
all right.
I do appreciate you coming on. And guys, like I said, if you don't follow Chris, go ahead and follow them. They are great. Catherine, both of them. So we'll have to do this again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and you have a great night.
You too, Chris.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.